Blessings, good evening. A couple of years ago, I took a group of monks and lay people to visit Wat Don Thap, which is a monastery, small monastery in a small island in the Moon River in Ubon province, northeast Thailand. We were staying at Ajahn Chah's monastery, but wanted to go and see the monastery where they built the stupa or the cheddy for Luang Pu Sao, who, as you may know, is the kind of the grandfather of the forest tradition. He was the original teacher of Luang Pu Man, although in the end Luang Pu Man reached Nibbana before Luang Pu Sao and then taught his own teacher the last final stages of the practice, they say. But anyway, the cheddy there at Wat Don Thap is a very fairly simple building in the trees. So quite secluded, private, and not that big, but has a great atmosphere, very peaceful. And we went there and we meditated for quite a while, and everybody could feel a very strong sense of peace, and some of the group, their mind settled right down into samadhi quite quickly. So it's quite memorable for that reason, that trip, that visit. And similarly, sometimes visiting Ajahn Chah's monastery and then the cheddy where his relics are, similarly. Been there many times, meditated, got very peaceful quite quickly, and many other people have that experience. Maybe this is the benefit of having a cheddy, either to house the bones, the relics of an arahant, enlightened one, or the Buddha, or both sometimes. So today, just doing a small joining in the making the foundations for the Subhata Chedya here. The Chedya Jnana Depot is building in recollecting Ajahn Chah on the hill here at Bodhipala Monastery. It just brought up those recollections of going to other cheddys over the years. Been to many cheddys around the world, and cheddys are very useful symbols of enlightenment, the peace, the wisdom, the practice of the Buddha, and then all the enlightened beings since the Buddha. It's a special kind of building because it's not a dwelling or a residence for anyone, it's just a place to house the relics of a noble one, an enlightened one. And whether it's a small cheddy, a medium size or large, very ornate ones, and you get all kinds. It's usually built to last, so some cheddys last thousands of years. And it's built to remind everyone of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. As we just chanted, Appamano Buddho, Appamano Dhammo, Appamano Sangho. The goodness of the Buddha is limitless, without limit, or immeasurable. The goodness of the Dhamma is without limit. The goodness of the Sangha is without limit. And a cheddy symbolizes that. It's like a beacon or a symbol reminding everyone of the goodness, the limitless or immeasurable goodness of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And it can, once it's built, hopefully can stay in place for many, many years, for many generations to benefit from. There's a special thing we have in Buddhism. It particularly symbolizes the enlightened mind, the mind that is free from craving, attachment, the causes of suffering. Whether it's the enlightened mind of the Buddha or a Savaka, student of the Buddha, like Luang Pu Sao or Luang Pu Cha or Luang Pu Man. It's a reminder of what we're practicing for, to free our minds from suffering, to reach Nibbana. There's also a reminder of the practice, the way of practice that leads you there. So just like when you build a cheddy, it takes many different actions and activities to build a cheddy, from picking the spot, clearing the spot, the location, and then preparing foundations, and then building up the building right to the top, the pinnacle of the cheddy, and later on maybe installing relics, decorating it, the area around. Whatever Sangha or laity do towards that project, it's all part of building a cheddy. Whether you do some gardening or landscaping, or you just mix some concrete, or you put one brick in place, or you make a donation. You don't actually do any physical activity yourself. It's all part of building a cheddy. And the Dhamma practice for enlightenment is much the same. Every little thing counts towards the final goal of Nibbana. We say Nibbana Paccayo Hotu. Whether it's cultivating mindfulness of your speech, your actions, keeping precepts, whether it's helping the Sangha or doing some acts of charity, whether it's practicing meditation, samatha meditation, calming your mind, developing mindfulness on an object, vipassana meditation, investigating the truth, the three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. All of the different parts of the practice fit together until ultimately the mind is purified. So every part of the practice, like every part of the cheddy, is important. And they all link together, they support each other. It's not like there's only one part of the practice that matters, only samadhi or only insight, panya that we develop is the important thing. Everything works together or links together to support the other parts of the practice. In short, we're learning to free our mind from mental defilements rooted in greed, anger, delusion, what we call kilesa. The Buddha said these are the cause of our suffering. They're in our mind, they arise in our mind, in our mental experience. So that's one of the problems, because you don't often see kilesa, they're not visible. We can maybe see them outwardly in people's behavior, but not always. And in our own behavior, we often can't even see a kilesa first, because it's just a mental state. So if there's something you have to find, identify and let go of, you need the qualities of mind to do that. You need to be willing to look, search in your own mind, and you need the tools to do that. You need the mindfulness, and to train in investigation, wise reflection, in order to understand your own mind and recognize kilesa better. You need the patience, the strength of mind, the energy to let go of kilesa. Not always easy to let go of. Even if you recognize a kilesa as a kilesa, you can't necessarily just drop it just like that. You might have to look at it, contemplate it many, many times before you're ready to let go. So not an easy practice, but because there are many monks, nuns, men, women who have done this practice before us, we know it can be done. And the cheddy is sort of the reminder of that we can purify our mind, let go of defilement. It's possible, it can be done. It's not just it's possible, but it's also it should be done, because nobody wants to suffer in life. We all want to be free from stress, suffering, unhappiness, sadness. Nobody likes any kind of suffering or unhappiness, but we often don't know what to do about it, how to prevent it, or if we are suffering, how to deal with it properly and end it. We often go in the wrong direction or just don't know. So the Buddhist path is a great gift to the world, but it's a path we have to develop, we have to practice. We have to study as well, we have to listen to the teachings or read them, remember them. But even then, what we've studied, we don't carry around with us all the time. Otherwise we'd just always be living in memories of information we've heard and talks and stuff we've read. What we have to do is use the teachings that we've studied, heard. We have to bring them into our hearts and actually practice. A very simple teaching I've always found useful, and many of the teachers quote quite often. Citte sankilite dukkati patikankha. The mind that is accompanied by mental defilement, meaning mental states rooted in greed, anger, delusion, will always go to a unfortunate or destination of suffering. Dukkati means suffering, place of suffering. Whether you mean a location, an actual place of suffering, like the mind is reborn maybe in future lives, or you just mean the suffering of a state of mind that is suffering. Anytime your mind is defiled by greed, anger and delusion, it kind of becomes darkened or saddened. Often we use the word saddened. It's sad. The mind is not happy, ends up suffering under the influence of greed, anger, delusion. Whereas the mind that is not under the influence of greed, anger and delusion is happy. Citte asankilite sukhati patikankha. Experiencing the happiness or a happy destination because no mental defilements are present. The Buddha or the Buddhist teachings would say that's just a law of nature. It's not like anyone is making this happen. The happiness you experience, the sadness you experience, it's not because of somebody else or some superior force. It's just through our mental activity that we have the option to get involved with and affect and change. So you can make that change. You can give up greed, anger and delusion if you practice, if you're willing to practice. Or if we let greed, anger and delusion keep running around, taking over our mind, then we'll keep being sad, unhappy, suffering. It's back to us again. And this is what all the enlightened disciples of the Buddha over the centuries have kind of proven what the Buddha said was true. Now it's up to us to prove whether it's true or not through our own practice, our own actions. Most of us, we have to practice from a starting point of we have some suffering that we've noticed in life. The suffering of the human body, aging, getting ill, aches and pains, accidents, injuries, thirst and hunger. We have all kinds of painful feelings we experience with this body, and it's just part of life. But quite often even that much we don't accept. We feel like somehow we're unlucky, or this shouldn't happen. You know, when you fall ill, or you cut yourself, or you feel hungry or tired, we often feel it's somehow not right, shouldn't happen to me. But it does, because once you're born and you've got a body, you will experience some discomfort and pain, and sometimes a lot of pain, just depending on the situation. Mental pain also, we don't like, we don't want, and we often feel somehow that we don't deserve it. I shouldn't feel angry or depressed or sad. But again, it's part of life. If you're following mental defilements, you will feel some mental despair, pain, anguish. But if you learn how to recognize defilement and let go, you don't necessarily have to feel mental suffering. And that's an important point. Physical suffering is often something you just have to bear with, be patient with. You can minimize it maybe. You know, we do things to reduce the pain in our body. But really, something you just have to learn to develop a good attitude and learn how to manage, say, or live with. Mental pain we can actually extinguish from the mind if we can remove the mental defilements. And this is what all our teachers remind us and talk about, how to remove mental defilements, greed, anger and delusion from our experience, how not to give in to them, how not to fall under their influence. That's the path of practice. So someone like Luang Por Man or Luang Por Sao or Luang Por Cha, these teachers, that's what we believe they did. And the reason we believe it's what they did is because when they talk about how they practiced, how to meditate, what they've done, you know, it makes sense if you're already practicing. You can sort of see that they know what they're talking about. And there's many, fortunately, there have been many teachers, even in this recent era, we have many teachers still living today who can talk about the practice and tell you what you need to do. Whether we're willing to do it or not, well, that's up to us, isn't it? It's not up to them, it's not up to the Buddha, it's not up to anyone other than ourselves. But at least we have opportunities to hear the teachings from these wise, peaceful teachers. And often, like we know from Ajahn Chah and other teachers, you know, people start from this point of suffering. They notice that life has some suffering in it, and they're interested to find a way out. They want a way out. Another contemporary of Ajahn Chah, the very first, we say the first enlightened disciple of Ajahn Mun, it's called Luang Por Prom. He's another monk from Ubon, if I remember correctly. He's very typical of the forest Ajahns. Like, he didn't start off pure and wise. He started off in a very kind of ordinary existence as a son of a farmer. And he got married, and he eventually, you know, he was doing quite well. He was quite hard-working, industrious man as a layman. And he bought more land, and then he bought more cattle. So he was good at raising cattle, cows, buffalo, and then selling them on and breeding them and selling more. And so he made a lot of money, because in those days that's how people made money. And he had a wife, he got married, and his wife got pregnant. So all was going well, but then when his wife gave birth to a son, he was very happy, he said, and then within a day or two, she died, and the son died. They both died very quickly. So he was grief-stricken. He'd made a lot of money already, he was successful, but he realized, oh, even with wealth, you lose your wife, you lose your son. Your heart experiences a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. But he didn't give up. He carried on with his business, raising, selling, buying and selling cattle. Made more money. He thought, well, if I can't have a family, I'll at least make money. And that should somehow take away my sadness and make me a happy man. That was his thought then, he said. He thought, I'll just make a lot of money. And he was making a lot of money, and eventually even got married a second time. But his second wife never got pregnant. But he kept thinking about what is happiness. That, like so many people who come to Buddhism, he's thinking, what is real happiness? And he made a lot of money, he was successful. But he felt just having a lot of money, wealth, land, cattle, it doesn't make you happy. You still have the sadness of loss, you have fear, anxiety about the future, all the kind of pain and suffering of attachment he could see, he still had it. And that's what brought him to listen to the Dhamma. And in those days, like Ajahn Chah, there were the Tudong monks of the Ajahn Mun tradition and Ajahn Sao as well, walking around Ubon. And so the layman, Lumpur Prom, he came across Lumpur Sao, heard his talks, and it all made sense now. When monks, having experienced life a little bit, he realized, when monks say, material wealth won't bring you ultimate happiness. The happiness of family, is a kind of happiness, but it's impermanent, it's unreliable. Things happen, things go wrong, people get old, people die, people get sick, they die. That all made sense to him now, listening to the forest monks. So actually he reached a point where he said, well, I'm off. He gave a lot of his money away and built a hospital in his local area. Because in rural northeast Thailand in those days, there were very few hospitals or clinics. So he put a lot of his wealth towards that, and then he went off to ordain, and his wife became a nun. She also had great faith. So they went their separate ways, just like in the time of the Buddha. Lumpur Prom, he went to live with a disciple of Ajahn Mun, not yet with Ajahn Mun, although he had that intention to live with Ajahn Mun, train with him. He lived with a disciple of Ajahn Mun, and he had always had this thought, I'm ordaining later in life, I've been married twice, I've had a business, I'm an older man, I've got to put twice as much effort into the practice as these young monks, because a lot of the monks around him were like 20 years old, 25 years old, whereas he was more like, I think, 40 years old or even older. So he had this thought, I've really got to put effort into my meditation because there are all these young guys around. So that was it. He just committed to the practice of meditation using the recitation of Buddha, walking meditation, reciting Buddha, sitting meditation, reciting Buddha, really making that the center of his mental activity to counter the effect of the normal effect of the mind under the influence of defilements. And he said when he started as a monk, learned to meditate, his mind was all over the place. He couldn't stop thinking about this and that. He said it was full of worries, full of regrets, full of sadness about the past, all kinds of concerns about the future. And then in those days, life as a monk was quite hard. Where's the next meal coming from? What's going to happen if I get sick? He said he had all the normal thoughts, but he could just see they're just self-created. And he realized if he put effort into developing mindfulness using his meditation object, he could let go of a lot of that stuff quite quickly. So he did. Sitting, walking. So I think by the time he had been a monk 3 years, his third pansa, he just determined not to lie down for the whole pansa. He could sit, he could walk, he could stand, but he wouldn't lie down. So he was sleeping not very much and spending a lot of time just practicing meditation. His mind started to get quite peaceful. Then he went to see Luang Por Man, and Luang Por Man gave him more teachings. And Luang Por Man said, "Oh, you've got a lot of determination, old monk." They called him old monk. You've got a lot of determination. You're older, but you're not giving up on your meditation, are you? You put a lot of effort in, more than some of these young monks. And at first he was suspicious of Luang Por Man, because Luang Por Man was a very small, skinny monk. Physically he was quite small. And Luang Por Prom was taller, kind of had a stronger physical body. His body was stronger. And he went to stay with Luang Por Man, and he thought, how can this small, skinny monk be an enlightened master who's got all kinds of psychic powers, and he's supposed to be the leading meditation master of Thailand. How can it be such a small, skinny monk? So he actually had his doubts, which was probably a mistake, because Luang Por Man was an arahant. And Luang Por Man seemed to know what he was thinking. So when he gave him his first teaching, they hadn't actually talked before at all. So Ajahn Luang Por Prom hadn't given out his thought that, Luang Por Man is very unimpressive, skinny monk. But Luang Por Man knew that's what he was thinking. So his first teaching to him was, don't judge things by their outward appearance. Don't jump to conclusions about other people, thinking you know them when you've only just seen them from the outside, because it's not true. You don't know someone's mind, and their outward appearance may or may not be impressive, but that's nothing to base your opinion on, really. You have to get to know someone, and maybe inwardly they have a lot of knowledge, skills, special qualities that you don't know about. So Luang Por Prom knew immediately, Ajahn Man, he must be good, because he can read my mind. So he said, I better stay and listen to what he has to say then. So he managed to set aside his own doubts and ego, stayed with the teacher. And Luang Por Man said, old monk, you've put a lot of effort into your meditation. You've got some samadhi already. You can stay up meditating all night. You're that peaceful and you're that energetic. That's really good. But you haven't developed much wisdom. You have peace, the peace of a peaceful mind, samadhi, mindfulness. But you also need to develop insight into the three characteristics. So he said, from now on you should contemplate the body, the physical body. You should learn how to, the word in Thai they use is mangai, which is like to kind of dissect, chop up your body, mentally, not physically. Mentally to dissect and chop up and pull apart your body until it's sort of in little pieces. You have to learn how to do that in your samadhi. So he said, take the 32 parts of the body that we chant, and get to know each part and break them down into their subcomponent parts as well. So he said, the bones, that's just a word, bones. You have to get to know every single bone in your body. There's about 300 bones. You have to get to know each tooth in your body, each hair on your head, each hair on your body, each bit of skin, each organ, each bit of sinews and tendons. He said, you've got to get to know it all. Get to know it visually, get to know it by putting your attention there with your mindfulness. And you have to contemplate to see everything is impermanent, it's dukkha, it's unattractive, and it's not self. Just a collection of elements, the four elements. So that's what he did. He went away, Ajahn Man taught him, and he went away and he did this. And became an anagami, having met Ajahn Man. Because he already had some samadhi, then he developed deep insight and let go of his attachment to the body, and eventually became an arahant. That was the first disciple, proper disciple of Ajahn Man, who became an arahant. And after that there were many others, and we believe Ajahn Chah was as well. Ajahn Man taught him, you have to learn how to contemplate, use wisdom and develop wisdom. The practice isn't just about developing states of calm, samadhi. although they are part of the practice, they're important. You also have to develop insight. If you're going to find out and catch your mental defilements, which are invisible, you can't just rely on samadhi, because samadhi is like a suppressant. And nowadays, nobody practices samadhi very much, but they'll go to the doctor and get pills to suppress their depression, their anxiety, their worries. But samadhi does that job probably better than pills do. But if you practice mindfulness, develop some states of calm, you may experience a lot of inner bliss, happiness, states of calm, bring you feelings of lightness of body, lightness of mind, what we call piti and sukha, rapture and happiness. It can bring you that, and that suppresses the defilements because you feel good. And it's not wrong, but it's because it suppresses the defilements, you're not yet rooting them out. So how do you root them out? Well, you have to contemplate, you have to develop vipassana, what we call vipassana nowadays. You have to contemplate and root out the defilements by contemplating your body and your mind, and see the impermanent changing nature of body, of mental states, feelings, thoughts, memories. See the unsatisfactory side of that which is impermanent and subject to change, cannot bring you lasting, permanent happiness. And also to see not self in your experience, to see that you don't own this body, because the body will go, ultimately you get old and sick and die, and you can't stop that. You don't own feelings, they arise due to causes and conditions, pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings. Memories arise, pass away, you don't really own them. Even thoughts, which we identify with so strongly, investigate to see you don't really own them. They're not you, you are not your thoughts. This is what he taught Lumpur Prom, who went away and practiced that and became enlightened, and then he taught it to his students, and he said, no, this is the way Ajahn Mun taught. This is the way Ajahn Prom taught. This is the way Ajahn Chah taught. You have to develop wisdom, so you use samadhi as a platform. The calm, the peace of mind. When the mind gathers together, it becomes very bright, energetic, and your attention is turned inwards. And when you develop some samadhi, you're with the mind, aren't you? You get to know the peaceful, radiant mind. But that's not yet nibbana. It's like a platform or a stepping stone to nibbana. What you have to then do is contemplate everything else that arises in your experience. Turn to look at the body, feelings, memories, thoughts, and observe them as they are. These are all things, phenomena that arise and cease, but there's no self in them. But you have to do that. Question them, look at them, investigate them until you're sure of that. And then the attachment will drop away, and the greed, anger, and delusion that forms will drop away. So obviously, if you can see body and mind as not self, empty of self, there's nothing to be greedy about, nothing to be angry about, nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be worried about, everything will drop away. And Lumpur Prom said he practiced this, and he also was testing himself. So like in those days, they go out into the forest all the time, staying in forest with a lot of disease, sometimes very lonely, very isolated, sometimes very little support in terms of food, wild animals around. So there were a lot of things that tested or challenged them to see whether they still had some attachment to comfort, anger when things are going wrong or you experience pain. And he said one of his biggest sufferings being out in the forest, just missing home, missing his former wife, missing things that he had before. He's always missing things, he said. But then he realized that's suffering. You miss something, you keep thinking of it, and it's because your mind keeps attaching to the memory, perhaps. Clinging to the memory, bringing it up, kind of dwelling on it, sticking with it. But then you suffer because of it. So he just kept constantly reflecting on the suffering of missing things until he realized you can actually be quite happy without those things, so then you don't miss them. But you have to realize that. You have to free your mind from the missing and just dwell in the present moment and be happy in the present moment. So that was one of his big kind of breakthroughs, where he learned not to get caught into missing things from the past and those kind of desires. Another one was fear. I remember he went to many forests in Thailand, but he was in northern Thailand, the biggest mountain in Thailand. It's called Doi Intanon. A bit like, in Australia, Mount Kosciuszko, I guess. But in Thailand they have bears and elephants and tigers and things. And at that time they had this massive bear. They called it the yucca bear, the giant bear. Bigger than the average bear and very frightening. And the people would see it and run away as soon as they saw it. It was so big and so fierce. And the bear would always run after people because people were always trying to shoot it and kill it because they were so afraid of it. And Luang Por Prom was in the forest on his own, and this bear was around. But he said fear came up in his mind when he meditated or was staying in the forest. But he was more interested in letting go of fear than just trying to get away from this bear. So he was behaving a bit differently than everyone else. Even monks were too afraid to be around this bear. It was so big and frightening. And Luang Por Prom said, no, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to let go of my fear. So there was a place he was staying where this bear was apparently very close by. And he was warned and told to leave, but he didn't. And in the end he met the bear. And he just looked at the bear and the bear looked at him. The bear didn't, in the end, it didn't charge at him or attack him, even though it was massive and could easily have killed him. So perhaps that was when he lost a lot of his fear, learning to confront this very frightening giant bear. And he had many stories like that, stories about missing family and former wife, stories of fear, facing the wild bear that was twice the size of an ordinary bear, fears of hunger, fears of disease, all the normal things you might expect, but just facing up to them and contemplating. He said he wouldn't let his mind just go into samadhi, because when you go into samadhi it's peaceful, happy, but you're suppressing your defilement. You don't see them. They remain invisible. You actually have to contemplate them, which means you have to be in situations where defilement arises, like fear, like desire, worry, attachments, wanting things that you like and want. So he was quite good at explaining how to practice as he was taught by his teacher. He had great respect for his teacher. And that's another thing you need as you practice. You need to respect your teacher. Listen to the teacher, try to follow what they say. Then you'll get the benefit. Another problem most of us have is we always resist. We're stubborn. We think we know better. The modern word is we have an ego. But that actually blocks you from seeing Dhamma again. Again, your defilements are invisible because your ego will not let you investigate because you think you know, I'm right. So we have to learn how to set that aside, and one way you do that is you listen to the teacher, you respect the teacher, follow their instructions until you know for yourself. And then you could say you don't need a teacher then, but you depend on the teacher until you reach that point. So this is some of the practices we do in the forest tradition, learning to calm the mind, learning to face and contemplate our attachments, all the causes of our sadness, our suffering, until we can see them, until we can let them go. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight for your contemplation.
Han tamayang avadakata sadhukarang tatamase sadhu 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 anamodami.